Well, after much setup, the decade-long feud between the Stussy brothers has finally been put to an end that gives us what might be the most shocking death this show has ever had. Hey guys, remember Fargo, Season 3, Episode 6, The Lord of No Mercy, and holy shit, what an episode. I mean, I thought that the last episode was crazy. That's nothing compared to this episode. I've never quite seen Fargo done some of this before. Sure, we've had deaths here and there, but never a major character, never someone that's been billed to be pure in every single episode. What this episode is truly a huge milestone for Fargo, and for me, it is a series best. I loved pretty much everything about this episode. We really got a bigger look into who Varga is as a character. We also really did shed some more light on the whole Ray and Emmit thing. We did, in fact, push Gloria and Winnie a little bit more to the side, but there's still a lot of stuff going on with them. This was by far, though, one of the most creepiest and most frantic hours of Fargo that we've had, and without a doubt the best episode of the season. I loved everything about this episode. There wasn't a single scene that I would take for granted, and now this season is really starting to pick up, and it really does make sense why we've had such a slow tone so far because of an episode like this, and I feel after this, the show's going to go in a very unexpected direction, but let's just get into this episode because I have no idea where we're going from here. I'm kind of speechless right now, honestly, but let's just get right into it. So we start off right where the last of us left off, where we see Nikki, she's struggling as hell Ray, who attacked her, and you can tell that she doesn't really want to, talk about it. She wants to pretend like it never happened, but it really does show in this episode that Nikki is in fact loyal to Ray, and she really does care about him, and she describes one as Oriental and one as Russian. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to get their names or the license plates of their cars, so obviously it doesn't really help Ray find who it could be, and every part of her body hurts, and she's sitting in front of the mirror thinking about the attack, and you can really just tell how much of an impact this really has had on her. I mean, she is completely shaken throughout most of this episode, and she really doesn't know what to do. I mean, and that's something I loved about Nikki, is that Nikki's someone who is such a go-getter and someone who always concocts these plans, so for her to kind of be out of ideas, I thought was really interesting here, and Ray has been quietly stewing. He decides that, you know what, I'm going to leap in the action here, and the second he did, I'm like, this is not going to work out for Ray at all, because Nikki always tells him what to do, and that's just kind of how it works, but when he doesn't have Nikki, there's no way this is going to work. So he rifles through drawers and cabinets until he finds his bullets and gun, and Nikki asks if he's ready, and he says, oh, you betcha, he definitely is ready. He's ready to take out Varga because no one messes with his woman, and I really did love how protective Ray is of Nikki, but you can tell that, this is something that Nikki probably would want to do on her own, but she just can't right now. So I thought immediately that really did get things off to a great start. It perfectly shows us what Nikki's going through. It shows the aftermath that has happened to her, and like I said, how shaken she is from this attack, and it really does top what is a truly epic episode. Incredible monologue with Varga, and I forgot how great David Thewlis's monologues really were. I mean, he did an incredible job in episode 4. That's nothing compared to his monologues here, and his teeth, I mean, just holy shit. There's a scene in this episode where he's just, like, picking at his teeth with, like, this little metal thing, and it's disgusting, but it's also so menacing, and David Thewlis just kills it here. He tells the story of the collapse of the Lehman Brothers Bank and the havoc that it caused, and his next true story lays out how World War I was started by a sandwich after a failed attempt to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which that part is true. I actually learned that in history class, the whole thing about Franz Ferdinand, and Gavrilo Principe noticed that the Archduke's car outside of Delhi, where he was having lunch, and he went outside and shot Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophie at point-blank range. And yes, that is in fact how World War I started. And Varga's final true story features footage of the 1969 moon landing. And I gotta say, I love how cinematic Fargo always is. Not just the whole widescreen, I've always loved that, how much it makes you feel like you're watching a movie, but how they reenact every single thing that Varga's telling. Like, when we're in World War I, we literally flash back to World War I. I think it's really cool the way we did that here. But he features footage of the 1969 moon landing. The camera pulls back to show the landing was shot on a Hollywood soundstage, and he's been telling these stories to Sai. And Sai is looking at him like he's an alien creature. I mean, there's no way that any of this could possibly be true. Sai's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I mean, all this stuff is just ridiculous. So Sai doesn't believe the moon landing was fake. He says that, and Varga says to let each man say what he deems truth and let truth itself be commended onto God. So Varga finally gets to the point of what's really going on here, that Stussy Lots is getting $50 million in new loans to be used to buy 16 more lots, and that will double the company size in 3 months, and Sai is not in the least bit happy about this development. He wants, obviously, them to just, maintain the regular lots that they've been having. And what Varga's doing, he's obviously not at all happy with. And we don't see a lot of Sai in this episode. We really don't. But that's because it really is showing how far, how much Emmit as a character has kind of isolated himself from Sai, which he is still with Sai, but he's much more loyal to Varga. Because remember, Varga's trying to make him think that Sai wants nothing to do with, that Sai is trying to turn against him. So Emmit actually, predictably agrees with Varga about the expansion. He thinks it's a great idea, but Sai is very concerned about the IRS. Varga reveals the IRS will actually going over fake books, and something Sai didn't know and shouldn't concern himself with. And Varga's not worried because international shell companies hide the real money from sight. So it's all been taken care of, and Sai doesn't need to be involved in the details. But knowing who Varga is, you can't really trust his word. I mean, at least if I was Emmit, I definitely wouldn't trust his word. I mean, again, I know Emmit doesn't know a lot of what's been going on behind the scenes, but I would not trust Sai's word here. I think things are good for Sai, but they definitely are not good for Emmit. So Meemo then meets with IRS agent LaRue Dollard, who of course we met in the last episode, and we find out what really went down here. Basically, he matches Dollar's carefully laid out folder, notepad, calculator, and pens with his own, and Meemo then slides paperwork across the table to Dollard, informing that he's representing Stussy Lots as attorney, and he's protesting this audit. So basically, he's representing it, and Meemo demands that Dollard give the required 30-day notice and a list of who he wishes to speak with. So he also demands that Dollard leave immediately. So again, you can tell this was in fact the work of Varga, but it's not nearly as clean as, he is alluding to Emmit. Obviously, they were behind this. They're doing what they can to get Dollard out of there. It's just all really crazy scheme, and again, it really does show how deadly Varga really is. And not just how deadly, but also how untrustworthy he really is. And I think that's something that Emmit is going to learn very, very soon, especially when it comes to this episode. So following the brief meeting, Meemo gets in the car with Yuri and they drive off, unaware that Ray and Nikki are close behind. Obviously, they want revenge. They know that these are the two guys who are responsible, and Yuri and Meemo then arrive in the lot where they're left the 18-wheeler in the last episode, and the 18-wheeler in episode 1, and they knock on the rear doors, and Varga steps out while from a rear distance, safe distance, we see Nikki and Ray watch this all go down, and Ray at this point wants to get his gun ready. He's just ready to kill them because, again, no one kills Nikki, and Nikki convinces him they need to wait for a better opportunity. This is just not the point to do it. She knows how powerful Yuri and Meemo really are. And again, this scene really does confirm how much Nikki really does care for Ray. You can tell that she really is worried about him. She doesn't want him to get involved now because she knows that he's probably going to get killed and that Yuri and Meemo are kind of unstoppable. And that's one of the reasons why Varga is such a powerful force, because he has someone like Yuri and Meemo who's willing to do whatever they can to make sure that Varga's winning. And if they have to take out Ray and Nikki, by all means, they will do that. So back at home, Ray is very worried that Nikki has internal injuries, but she refuses to go to the hospital since the cops and the bad guys are looking for her already. And obviously, she doesn't want to make this a worse of a situation than it is. She's the reason that Ray got fired for many reasons. Well, they both kind of are. And she also knows that Meemo and Yuri are not done with her. They will kill her. So she is terrified to actually go to the hospital. And Nikki actually believes that Emmit might be doing something illegal against his will. And that's very much true. Emmit doesn't realize how illegal this really is. And the way Varga made it seem is that this was a completely legal thing. That's obviously not the case. Yuri and Meemo, basically, they shooed Dollard out. So obviously, he doesn't really understand what's going on there. Ray then asks her to explain. Nikki thinks that there's shady dealings going on. And she's absolutely right. That's exactly what's going on. She's even figured out that Emmit probably burrowed cash from a disreputable lender, and she wants to know for sure what's going on before they make their move. So again, even though she is so bedridden throughout this episode, she still is the one making the moves here, and she still is the one that is planning every single step that she can to bring Emmit down. And I love the way that they're setting this up, where she's finding a different way to bring him down than we thought. And again, a lot of people have, I think, judged Emmett wrong. I heard a review calling Emmett a bad guy, and I would not say that at all. I think Emmett totally is a good person, but he's just got himself in league with these really evil doers, and he doesn't really understand what he's getting himself fully invested in, and I don't think he's going to really understand that until things get really bad for him. So we'll talk about that at the end of this episode. But meanwhile, we see Chief Gloria and Officer Winnie. They show up at Emmett's office wanting more details on the car accident, and they're starting to tie all the players together. I mean, this is really the episode where they're starting to get all the information they really need, and Varga interrupts to claim that this is his area of expertise, and he won't give Gloria and Winnie his name, saying that he's simply an associate of Emmett's. And I love the way the scene was shot from Varga's perspective. Like, we heard Emmett talking to Gloria and Winnie, but we don't actually know what he was saying. This was all what Varga was saying, because, again, he's the one pulling the strings, and he's going to make sure that he's the one that is winning here. So Gloria then asks about Ray. Varga speaks up and asks what that has to do with an auto accident, and because, of course, Gloria wants to know about his connection to Ray. Because remember, Ray said that they're great brothers, that they have this great interaction. Emmett's kind of not following that story. So she knows there's definitely something shady just from that. But they inform the men that their investigation could tie into a homicide, and Emmett is obviously unaware of what she's talking about. This is the first time that, she talks to Emmett and Ray and they're actually honest, because that's the part that Emmett has no idea. He doesn't know anything about the air conditioner or anything like that, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care any of what's going on there, and he does admit he read about Enos Stussy in the newspaper, and Gloria fills in the details of how he died and that the house was actually ransacked, and she also reveals that Maurice did the actual killing and that Ray was Maurice's parole officer. That led them to the car accident and Ray arguing with someone who works for Emmett. And all of this really makes Emmett start to put things together. Gloria brings a story to say it's curious that the victim was also a Stussy with the first initial E+. The town had a similar name to Emmett's address, and Gloria can clearly tell there's something more going down here, and you can tell Emmett he's holding that rage in. He's trying to stay he's just trying to stay neutral. He's trying not to crack at this point, but he really is trying to hold in that rage as much as possible. And again, the way that Ian McGregor is playing this character is just so well done. It's such a deeply layered character, and I think this scene really does show how layered Emmett really is. He's someone who tries to keep himself composed and together, when in reality he's really not that together, and he's even more broken than Ray really ever was. I mean, he's someone who is willing to crack. He really is working for this very shady organization. He doesn't really understand what's really going on there until I think it gets really worse for him. And I think that's one of the reasons why Emmett is such a good character. And I think that's also the reason why the end of this episode turns out the way it does, which we'll get into in a second. So Gloria then asks if there's a feud going on between Emmett and Ray, and Emmett admits that they've had their differences, and Varga then interjects, asking for an explanation as to the connection between Ray and the victim. And Varga then goes off on this tangent about how there's no way Emmett and Ray are actually related, because apparently there were only 24 Hitlers in 1932 in Germany, and they weren't all, behind the final solution, which I get what he's trying to do here. But again, Varga's he's getting way too involved in this, and he's also looking into it a lot less than he should be. He's clearly trying to cover Emmett's ass here, but Gloria then calls bullshit on Varga, replies 24 exactly before returning to question Emmett, so she knows obviously that that's bullshit. Gloria asks Ray if Ray wanted something of Emmett's, and Emmett finally puts two and two together and comes up that Ray was trying to rob him, which is absolutely what was going to happen here. He was trying to take the stamp from him, if you remember. So Varga then dismisses the officers, saying he'll contact Gloria and Winnie if they have anything else to say. So after the officers leave, Varga sounds impressed that Ray actually has a backbone, that Ray actually might have wanted to do something, to steal from Emmett, but he didn't at the last moment. He's glad that Ray actually did stick through to that. He thought that Ray was dumb, and we're seeing that that's not really true. Is Ray the brightest? No, but I don't think Ray's nearly as dumb as, say, Maurice. Maurice is the reason why this was all fucked up. So later that night, Varga then searches for Gloria on the internet, and we get probably the creepiest scene of this episode. He's searching for Gloria on the internet, but nothing seems to come up, and I was wondering what this is really about, because he can't seem to find her name anywhere, and he tries multiple searches, discovers that Eden Valley's police station doesn't have any computers, we find out, which, again, that makes sense, because we know that technology is not really Gloria's friend nowadays, and it doesn't really work well for her, so I thought this was really interesting, that they don't have any computers whatsoever, and he definitely, I love the way that he is starting to even control Gloria a little bit. You can tell he wants to pull the strings, but there's not much he she can do because there's no records of Gloria. And again, a little scene in episode 3 with her saying she doesn't have Facebook is really kind of protecting her because Varga can't really do anything financially to her or anything like that. You can tell he wants to, but he can't. So Varga then gives Yuri instructions to go to the police station and quickly gather info on Enos Stussy because he's not just going to give up. There's no way he's going to do that. And he also tells Meemo to find Ray and Nikki and just kill them. He now knows that Ray was trying to steal from Emmit. He will do everything he can to make sure that doesn't happen because, like I said before, I don't think he gives a shit about these people. I think he simply just wants to make Emmit filthy rich, and then he wants to take all the money from him. That's what he clearly does want to do here. So at home, Ray is then tending to Nikki, and there's a knock at the door, and this scene was just so well, the tension here was just so well done because of the fact that, you know, we know that Meemo and Yuri are coming for Ray and Nikki, so we don't know what's happening here. He grabs his gun, obviously because he's terrified that this could possibly be Meemo and Yuri, and he makes his way to the front door. The knock continues, but now Nikki sees another person shadow outside the bedroom door, and it's actually Gloria and Winnie, and they leave when no one answers. So Ray says that heat's on, they better blow, so they know obviously they have to get out of there because they're already suspicious of them. So while there, they sneak out the back with their suitcases, they pull away, a car then follows them, and they arrive at the Ambassador Motel, and in that entire scene, I mean, I was just watching in such, it was so suspenseful. I was watching in such suspense because I didn't know what was really going to happen. So many things could have happened here. Yuri and Meemo could have found them. Gloria and Winnie could have, you know, possibly arrested them. I mean, so many possibilities of just riding on this one scene, and it really does remind us how great Fargo is at tension. When they're really firing on all cylinders, they really do this incredible job with tension, and because of how much we care about all these characters, the outcome, you know, is the outcomes for what could happen here are endless, and I think, again, that was very well projected onto this scene. So Nikki and Ray arrive at the Ambassador Motel Inn, and Ray gets a room while Nikki keeps watch, and the motel is nearly empty, and once they're in their room, Ray then helps Nikki into bed before grabbing their suitcases, and Nikki needs aspirin and cold compressors, reminding him to pay with cash, and he's actually out of cash, and he can't believe that he left the money they stole from the bank back at his place, unfortunately. He left it there, so he volunteers to head back to the house to get money, which is probably the one thing that Nikki is going to regret throughout the rest of the season. I'll talk about why once we get to the end of this episode, but this is probably going to be one of the biggest things that Nikki regrets. The fact that she made him go back to the house to get money. The fact that she didn't try to stop him. So Meemo then waits around the corner from their hotel room, watches as Ray's car then pulls away, and Nikki then slips out of the room, walks literally right by where Meemo was hiding. If she made one more step or went somewhere else, she could have easily been killed by Meemo. So she's on her way to the ice machine. She failed to close her door, and Meemo must be in the room as the door squeaks and almost shuts. So you know that Meemo is coming to her. It seems like they are catching up, and at this point I thought Nikki was going to be the one to die. After what happened to her, it just seemed inevitable that Nikki was going to die here, but we'll get into that. So Ray then makes to the house, and Emmett's already there, singing alone in the dark, and we get that epic confrontation between these two that we've been waiting for. We got in episode 2, and it was good, but that was really the start of this feud. This, without a doubt, is the inevitable end, and basically, Emmit tells him straight up that he wins. He's done. To tell him whatever he wants, just tell him, you know, he doesn't care anymore. He's done. And he sounds resigned, like he doesn't want this feud to go on anymore. And he reveals the ashes of the bank that Ray poured into the trash where his dog, Laverne's, and basically, Ray admits that he was looking for his stamp, and Emmett's confused why Ray is the one person who doesn't like him. Everyone else seems to like Emmit. You know, he's very well liked by everyone. He's in this very comfortable position. Why does Ray dislike him so much? And Emmit says he's a fair man who helps people when they're down, and I would say that's a good, you know, that's a good way of what he wants people to think of him, but he's also this man who's in a very shady organization. He's also someone who very much likes to take what's his, and he hasn't really, you know, done anything for Ray. And yes, he cares about Ray very much, but he hasn't really done anything for him. He's given him all this money and things like that, and now he suddenly just stopped. And obviously, you know, because of the circumstances of what's been going down with Varga, these two haven't had a lot of interaction, and Ray still feels like his brother doesn't really help him, because he doesn't. I mean, he hasn't helped him get a better job, he hasn't helped him financially, he hasn't given him a better position. I mean, Emmit could have offered him position, you know, all the money he had, he could have easily done that. He could have, you know, made Sai and Ray possibly get along, but there wasn't anything he did. And Ray also feels lesser than his sibling, which, I mean, he should in many ways, because he lost his job because of him, and he feels like he really could have been more well liked. And Emmett's had it up to here with an argument. He's done with it. He just doesn't want to hear it anymore. And he hands his brother the frame stamp, telling him that their beef is now over. He gives it to him. He doesn't want the relationship to continue this way, so he's giving Ray the stamp. But Ray just can't accept it. He knows that it rightfully is Emmett's. As much as Ray wants to take it, he knows that he's not the one to have it. That's what I saw in the scene. He's realizing the last moment, this is not my stamp. This was something that my father gave to Emmett, and this is meant to be his. And he claims it was from the start. And when Emmett agrees, Ray's still not willing to stop. He shoved the frame back and forth at each other until it just randomly hits Ray in the face, and you think everything's okay. You think, okay, that's the end of the stamp, that's the end of the feud, and that's just going to be the end of it. I thought that's really what this meant, but it's a much more greater impact now, because we see the glass actually shatters, and he has a few minor cuts on his face. But that's not the problem. You just see a few minor cuts, and I love the way that the camera panned out, and then we finally reveal that there's actually a glass shattered. A large piece has wedged in his neck, and obviously, if Ray pulls it out, he is most certainly going to die, and Emmett tells him not to pull it out, and it shows that Emmett really does care about him. Like, he obviously does not want his brother to die. But Ray doesn't anyway. At this point, I got the sense that Ray is willing to die. He doesn't care that, the glass is lodged in him. He feels like he did what he needed to do. No one really cares about him. He feels lesser than he really ever has, and it is Emmett's stamp, rightfully. He should be the one to take it, and the only way for him to do that is to take himself out. So there's blood immediately spurting from the wound, and Ray then grabs his throat. He looks at the blood in his hand. He reaches for his brother, just wanting to be with him one more time. That's what I saw, is where he's like, Emmett, Emmett. He just wants him to join his hand and be there with him. And he sinks to his knees, falls face down on the floor, dead in a pool of blood. And yeah, Ray's dead. I was shocked too, but Ray's actually dead here. And on a lesser show, I would say that this was just a shock value death. Like, this was completely unsatisfying. There was no way they should kill him when there's still, 4 episodes left this season. But here, I really thought it made a lot of sense. The way Ray's arc has been going, I really did think it made sense here, because like I said, Ray is not the brightest of individuals, and there are a lot of things he did that could have prevented this. But because of how bad this feud really got, there's just a lot of unresolved feelings between these two, when they easily could have just had a conversation and talked things out. But because of what Nikki wanted to do, because of what Varga told him to do, it all just kind of added up. And when it really does come down to it, neither of this were Ray and Emmett's fault. It's more the influences that they've had that really was the catalyst for this fight in the first place. And I think in general, this really was just a lot of unresolved feelings and a lot of misunderstandings that really could have fixed a lot of this. And it really does show how ridiculous this feud really was. But the fact that it really did go in this direction, I think was extremely satisfying. It was exactly the way I wanted Ray to die. And when it really does come down to it, I don't think they could have done this ending for him any better than they really did. But surprisingly, that's not the end of the episode. I thought it was going to end there, but it doesn't. Emmett actually calls Varga, and after Varga finishes talking about symphonies, Ray confesses that there's been an accident, and he asks Varga to meet him at Ray's. So, back at the hotel, we see Meemo. He's waiting for Nikki to return, and he gets a call as Nikki knows that the door is still open, and she looks around quickly before entering the room. Again, she knows that Meemo is there waiting for her. She kicks open the bathroom door, and no one is there. He's just kind of vanished. We don't know why, but he's just kind of gone. We see he's actually with Varga now. How he got there that fast, I have no idea, but he did, and M points out that every place he might have left fingerprints, and Varga tells Meemo to grab the stamp and the frame, but leave the glass. Make sure the glass is still there. Just clean up all the evidence, and Varga then asks Emmett where he's supposed to be. It appears he should be at a restaurant having dinner with Sai. That's what he said he was going to do, but that's not where he is, and Varga then instructs Emmett to go through the restaurant's back door, use the restroom, and put cold water on his face to make it seem like he was there. And Varga then reveals this plan that is truly insane. I don't know if it's actually going to work out nearly as well as Varga thinks, but knowing Varga, he's going to make sure this works out. He basically reveals that he plans to frame Nikki for Ray's murder, and the cover story is that Nikki was being abused, so she cut Ray's throat. That Ray was abusing Nikki, and she slit his throat with the glass, and that's how he died. And Varga also warns him to be upset and say he hasn't seen his brother in days. Whatever he says to the cops, he needs to be vague about. And Emmit quietly says that he didn't mean to. And what I think Emmit means by that is that he didn't mean for it to get this bad. Like, he didn't know the true impact that he was really having on his brother. He didn't realize that his brother felt worthless and that he didn't really have much of a life. And the only person his brother really cared about was Nikki. He was willing to die for her just to protect Nikki, and he would do whatever he could for her. Remember, he was going there to get money for her, and Varga replies that no one really ever does, and I think that's very true of Varga saying that no one really ever means to do anything, but that's just kind of how it escalated. I don't think Emmit ever meant to get into the situation with Varga. I don't think Ray ever meant to kill, never meant for things to get bad with Maurice. I don't think they meant to have a fight over the feud, but that's just kind of how things have happened. It just kind of escalated that way, and I think that line is very paramount to pretty much everything that goes down in this, in this season. So we then get the last scene here where Gloria's driving home after work, but she changes her mind and pulls a U-turn, and she radios in asking for Officer Lopez to be informed that she's returning to Ray's house. She wants Winnie to meet her there, and she's right at the scene of the crime where she's getting ready to arrest Ray because she thinks that Ray is the one that's guilty, completely unknown about the murder, and that is the way this episode ends. Really shocking stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where the hell we're going from here, because honestly, I have no idea. So, holy shit, I mean, I can't believe the show has gone this direction. Like I said in the beginning of my video, I think we've definitely had major deaths in the show before. I mean, I can talk about countless deaths we've had. I mean, we all remember that crazy episode in Season 1 where, like, every small character died, or Season 2 when we had a lot of major deaths in that. This season hasn't had a lot. We've had Maurice, and that's kind of been it. The fact that Ray, well, we also had the lawyer, but the fact that Ray died already in episode 6 is insane to think about, but it kind of does make sense. One, Ian McGregor no longer has to play double duty. Two, we can now really focus more on Emmit, and I think Ray has always been a very interesting character. Emmit's been great too. I've loved both of these characters to death, definitely. I think they've both been very well developed, and I think definitely they're some of the most interesting characters we've had of this season. I think every character has been interesting, but their feud has always been very interesting. But the fact that it hasn't been as big a part of the season as we thought, it has been, but it's been a very internal feud. It hasn't really been external where they've had a feud face-to-face. A lot of this they didn't really know was going on. Remember, episode 2, Emmit was willing to end it. He wanted to make amends with Ray, and Ray was willing to do the same thing. They both Ray came there to make amends, but it was just too late. Too many things escalated, too many things went down. Nikki did things, Varga did things, and I think because of the way that things were going, the trajectory of the season, it made sense for Ray to be the one to die. I think that, again, it's very shocking, but honestly, I don't think they could have handled it better, and I don't think that Ray would have had as much to do in this second half of the season, especially now that Emmit is so heavily involved in what's going on. It makes a lot of sense for this to happen, and now we got this whole thing with Varga where Emmit really needs to decide if he's really willing to do this. Is he really willing to frame his brother's girlfriend for all of this? I mean, that also his fiance, but Emmit has no idea about that. Is he really willing to frame his brother's girlfriend for this? I mean, it's crazy, but it definitely is a lot to ask, but knowing Varga will make sure this does go down the way he wants to. Whether Emmit likes it or not, Nikki is definitely going to be framed and possibly go to jail, and I don't know if Nikki's going to come out of this, unfortunately, and you're hoping that Nikki is going to get away from Yuri and Meemo. You're hoping that she is going to get out of there, but I think now that Ray is dead, we're really going to start to see Nikki's true intentions. Did she really care about Ray, or did she just play this role all along for a larger purpose? Does she really want to be with Ray? Is she really willing to stick to this plan? Is she willing to stick to this story? There's a lot of things here that we don't know about, and that's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is getting more into the character of Nikki, who is such a fascinating character, and I'm so happy they didn't kill her off, because she is so interesting. I've loved everything about her character, and I can't wait to see where we're going to go with that particular storyline. That's going to be so interesting. Also, Sai is so outnumbered at this point, and he's so out of the conversation in many ways, and he has no idea really what's going on, but he also knows a lot of things. He knows a lot of what's going on with Varga, that he's, had all these rude comments about his wife, and he's basically taken over Sai's entire office, and it looks like the next episode he's just going to break down because he just doesn't know what to do about everything. And the line where Varga says that no one really ever does mean to do anything is very true. A lot of the stuff that happened this season was simply because of little small instances, and that's something that this series has always built off of, is a lot of mundane things. You know, the first season was I believe he killed her with like a hammer or something like that, but it was because of her getting on his nerves and he just wanted to knock her out. He didn't mean to actually kill her, but realizing that he killed her, he wanted to, you know, brutalize her murder. Season 2 was that whole shootout in like the donut shop or whatever, but again, that was not, you know, that was because of what actually, you know, he didn't mean to kill everyone. It just kind of went down the way. And then this season, he was killed with the air conditioner because he was going to kill them, and obviously they didn't want him to do that. They thought he was kind of useless. They had to kill him. And now we're in this situation with Varga, and again, I don't know where the hell this season's going, but I don't really care. I don't want to predict because I feel like my predictions are not as good as what's actually going to happen for the rest of the season. Now that we have Emmit involved, is Emmit really willing to go to the dark side? Is he really willing to adhere to what Varga wants him to do? Or is he going to start to see through Varga? I'm surprised he hasn't yet, but I feel like, again, it's because Varga has serviced him for the most part. I mean, again, Varga helped out Emmit. He tried to rat him out here, and especially when it came to Gloria, he tried to take Emmit's side and make it seem like Emmit was completely innocent. So again, you can tell that Varga, he is on Emmit's side, and I think that's until he gets exactly what he wants from Emmit, which is all his finances. He wants to make him extremely rich and then take it all away from him. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen, and I don't think Emmit's going to really understand that till the very last second. It sucks, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And then as far as Gloria and Winnie, they are slowly catching up on what's actually going on here. And I mean, their boss obviously wants answers. This is how he's going to get answers. I mean, obviously, Damek doesn't believe what the hell's going on, but this is how they proved him that this is a huge situation, that this definitely is something that he should be worried about, and I think this is definitely something that is very much going to change Damek's worldview into this whole situation. Either way, guys, this episode was absolutely insane. I can't believe the way this episode really did go. It really does show how much this season has changed. It went from a season I thought was going to be very familiar and predictable to a season that's gone in a completely different direction than I expected to be, and that's why this season has turned out so good. I'm surprised that we went this direction, but I'm also very happy because it's different than anything we've ever had before. We've never really had a main character death like this before, and now that we've had this, I'm very excited to see where the show's really going to go from here. This is without a doubt one of the best episodes of the entire series, and I'm absolutely new to Fargo, Season 3, Episode 6, The Lord of No Mercy, a 5 out of 5 or an A+. Guys, this is really the pinnacle of the season. This officially shows how great the season really is, and from here, I have no idea where we're going, and honestly, I don't really care. I'm just excited to see what's really going to happen, and I don't know, you know, where it's all going. I don't really know what direction we're headed in here, who's really going to win, but either way, this is probably the most predictable Fargo, unpredictable Fargo's ever been, and I really hope that this death does pay off in the end, because this is such a risky death. I really do hope that the choice to focus on Emmit doesn't deter the show in any way, because now it's better than it's ever been, and I can't wait to see where the show's going to go from here. So overall, guys, remember this episode of Fargo. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Loved your thoughts in it. What a crazy episode. But now I only have one episode left. Don't know if I'm going to watch it today or if I'll review to you on Wednesday. I don't know what's really going to happen there, but we'll have to see what happens. Either way, guys, really did love this episode, and that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys at my next video, which if it's not for episode 7 of Fargo, it will be for Twin Peaks: The Return. I know you guys have been waiting for me to review that for a while, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.